watch the show regularly, you know that I've been skeptical of some of the left-leaning media coverage of the January 6th committee. I've thought that they've exaggerated some developments that were actually pretty minor and tried to turn every new detail into a bombshell. But today was different. Cassidy Hutchinson, a top aide to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, dropped some truly explosive testimony this afternoon in her appearance before the January 6th House committee. Hutchinson was present for many high-level meetings on and before January 6th. And her account of Donald Trump's comments and actions leading up to the riot was truly jaw-dropping to liberals and conservatives alike. Hutchinson described weapons being confiscated at the gates to the ellipse ahead of Trump's speech on the morning of the 6th. Hutchinson testified that according to Secret Service agent and interim Deputy Chief of Staff Tony Ornato, so this is secondhand, Trump actually wanted to remove the metal detectors, or mags as they are also known, because it was hampering the crowd size.
I think the last time we talked, you mentioned that some of the weapons that people had at the rally included flagpoles, oversized sticks or flagpoles, bear spray. Is there anything else that you recall hearing about that the people who would gather on the ellipse had?
I recall Tony and I having a conversation with Mark probably around 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m., where I remember Tony mentioning knives, guns in the form of pistols and rifles, bear spray, body armor, spears, and flagpoles. Spears were one item, flagpoles were one item, but then Tony had relayed to me something to the effect of, and these effing people are fastening spears onto the ends of flagpoles. But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, you know, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
That's critical because if true, it would suggest the president knew they had weapons and knew they were heading to the Capitol. The committee also played police radio transmissions of officers talking about seeing people with weapons near the Capitol.
There's an individual who's in a tree. He's going to be a white male, about 6 feet tall, tin bills, brown cowboy boots. He's got blue jeans and a blue jean jacket, and underneath the blue jean jacket, the complainant saw stock of an AR-15. He's going to be with a group of individuals, about five to eight other individuals. Two of the individuals in that group at the base of the tree near the porta potties were wearing green fatigues, green olive drab style fatigues, about 5'8", 5'9", skinny white males, brown cowboy boots. They had Glock style pistols in their waistband.
8736 with the message that subject weapon on his right hip. After that, he's in the tree.
Motor 1, make sure PPD knows they have an elevated threat in the tree south side of Constitution Avenue. Look for the Don't Tread on Me flag, American flag face mask, cowboy boots, weapon on the right side hip.
I got 3 men walking down the street in fatigue carrying AR-15, copy at 14th and Independent.
Now, Trump was following the proceedings closely today and offered running commentary on his Truth Social platform. In one message, he flatly denied this part of Hutchinson's story, quote, "Never complained about the crowd. It was massive. I didn't want to request that we make room for people with guns to watch my speech. Who would ever want that? Not me. Besides, there were no guns found or brought into the Capitol building. So where were all of these guns?" But that was just one of the revelations in this afternoon's hearing. Hutchinson described how President Trump allegedly took some truly wild measures to try to join the rioters at the Capitol after his speech, although his security detail, including Bobby Engel, told him it was not safe.
So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, "We're not, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing," the president had very strong, a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president. take me up to the Capitol now. To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
Yes, Trump, Hutchinson says, actually tried to grab the steering wheel to reroute his limo to the Capitol. But we should point out that Bobby Engel has also apparently been interviewed by the committee. So the question is going to be, are they going to play Bobby Engel's testimony? Is it consistent? But this was far from an isolated instance, Hutchinson said. Her description of a December 1st incident at the White House in which Trump blew up over Attorney General Bill Barr saying in an interview that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud.
The valet had articulated that the president was extremely angry at the Attorney General's AP interview and had thrown his lunch against the wall, which was causing them to have to clean up. So I grabbed a towel and started wiping the ketchup off of the wall to help the valet out. And he said something to the effect of, "He's really ticked off about this. I would stay clear of him for right now. He's really, really ticked off about this right now."
And Ms. Hutchinson, was this the only instance that you are aware of where the president threw dishes?
It's not.
And are there other instances in the dining room that you recall where he expressed his anger?
There were several times throughout my tenure with the Chief of Staff that I was aware of him either throwing dishes or flipping the tablecloth to let all the contents of the table go onto the floor.
Throwing dishes, flipping tables, grabbing steering wheels, incredible accusations from Cassidy Hutchinson today. But she also testified about Mark Meadows, the man she worked for directly. Hutchinson testified that she could not convey to Meadows what she'd been told about the dangers at the scene on January 6th by Deputy Chief of Staff Ornato, as Meadows shut her out completely. And when she finally did get a hold of her boss, Hutchinson depicted him as disinterested in what she had to say.
Finally were able to give Mr. Meadows the information about the violence at the Capitol. What was his reaction?
He almost had a lack of reaction. I remember him saying, "All right," something to the effect of, "How much longer does the president have left in this speech?"
The attacks on her became personal from the former president. Quote, "I hardly know who this person Cassidy Hutchinson is, other than I heard very negative things about her, a total phony and leaker. And when she requested to go with certain others of the team to Florida after my having served a full term in office, I personally turned her request down. Why did she want to go with us if she felt we were so terrible? I understand that she was very upset and angry that I didn't want her to go or be a member of the team. She is bad news." But that reaction tells you some of what you need to know. As much as the former president might try to deny all of this, the testimony in and of itself was a big deal. There are going to be questions, but it is definitely shaking up even Donald Trump's inner circle. So coming up, we've just shown you some of the most dramatic moments from today's testimony, along with some of Donald Trump's responses. We'll discuss if this changes the legal landscape, and while the Democrats are salivating, each bombshell may actually be good for the GOP. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.